I wish that I had applied this advice when I was first looking for an engineering job. So recently, I came across this post from Steve Wynn, aka A Life Engineered on YouTube. Here, he talks about his main takeaways for people early on in their tech careers. And I thought this advice was really good and very useful for aspiring engineers. So in this video, I'll talk through each of his takeaways and how you can use it to land a cloud or DevOps job. So first off, set aggressive targets and work backwards from them. Find the intersection between what you're good at, where there's high demand, and what pays well. Now, I want to break this down into two separate points. Let's take a look at the second sentence first. So this relates a bit to the idea of finding your ikigai. Now, your ikigai is your life purpose, but the intersection that Steve is talking about here refers to your ideal profession. The idea being here that if we want to find this ideal profession, we actually need to think about it intentionally. And, this seems obvious, right? Obviously, we need to think about what career we're going to go into. But I think sometimes people actually forget to do this. So, for example, I have a friend who's a doctor, but he never really questioned it as a career growing up. He kind of just went along with what his parents wanted and what he thought he was supposed to do. And to be honest, part of him wishes that he had done something else now. And I think that happens to a lot of us when we're young and trying to figure out what we're going to do with our lives. We get influenced by the people around us, our parents, on social media and what we see online. Certain careers may seem more attractive than they actually are. But the thing is, your career takes up such a huge part of your life. You're going to spend like 30 to 40 years of your life working. So it's really important to be intentional about it. But how does this apply to cloud engineering? The obvious thing you have to ask yourself is, do you actually want to be a cloud engineer? Have you actually considered all of the negatives about the role? Are you just in it for the money? I think people on social media tend to glamorize these engineering roles. The free lunch, the cool offices, and all of the perks. And to a certain extent, I'm guilty of it too on this channel. It's easy to highlight only the positive aspects of the role because that's what gets the views. But there are definitely challenging things that you have to deal with. Okay, so let's say you're sure you definitely want to be a cloud engineer. When you're applying for cloud jobs, especially early on in your career, it can be tough to stand out. Lots of candidates have the same certifications, they've done the same projects, and in general, they have a very, very similar resume. Well, being a bit more intentional with what specific area of cloud you want to go into would help your application stand out a lot more. It's similar to if you imagine you're at a bookshop. You're more likely to buy the books that have the most interesting title or cover. The books that, stand out a bit more. So if you're really into serverless, for example, and you've built some impressive projects using AWS Lambda and API Gateway, that's going to catch a hiring manager's attention a lot more than just having, let's say, the AWS Solutions Architect certification. Now, of course, you also have to balance that with the other aspects that Steve mentioned, like demand and pay. It's great if you're really passionate about a super niche area of cloud computing, but if there aren't many job opportunities available in that area, it might not be the most practical choice. The second point that Steve makes here is the idea that you should work backwards from your main goal. I think people know this, but don't really take the time to apply it, myself included. When I was applying for jobs, I didn't really think about it in this way. So suppose you want a cloud job. That's the end goal. Working backwards from that, what do you need to do? Well, you need to have a good application and be able to interview well. But let's work backwards again. So in order to have a good application, it actually needs to get reviewed by companies and impress recruiters. How do you do this as an entry-level cloud engineer? Well, to do this, you need to stand out. And I think the best way to stand out is to build a personal brand. Now, building a personal brand as a developer is a whole topic in itself. I may cover this in a future video, actually. But in short, you want to try to be known for something. For example, oh yeah, that's Steve, the serverless guy, or that's John, the cloud security guy. Do you need a personal brand to get a cloud job? No, definitely not. But it makes things a lot easier. Otherwise, you'd be competing with lots of other people with similar backgrounds. In this case, you would need to be either very good or very lucky to stand out. So yeah, takeaways from me. Think carefully about what particular area within cloud you want to work in. Think about your interest, the demand, and the pay. Secondly, work backwards to find the action you need to take that would have the most impact. Usually for aspiring cloud engineers, this is building some kind of personal brand. Now, Steve's second point is to leverage your network for opportunities, even if it's not in tech. People can't help if they don't know what you're looking for. So you've probably heard this before. There's the famous saying, your network is your net worth. The problem is, a lot of people network in a really, really superficial way. They'll just try to get a formal referral without really building a genuine relationship. And sure, sometimes that can work, but companies are starting to catch on. This post from Hacker News sums it up quite well. There's two kinds of referrals. The official ones with a program that goes through HR, then the unofficial where someone knows a hiring leader with an open spot. The latter is infinitely better. Think about someone that works for a big tech company, for example. They're probably bombarded with messages on LinkedIn. Their company knows this and knows that because they pay a referral bonus, the employee may be tempted to just refer random people that reach out to them with a good-looking LinkedIn profile. But the companies have now started to combat this. Like, I recently read that at Amazon, they've started to differentiate between what they call networking leads and actual referrals. Networking leads are people you haven't actually worked with, but you're just trying to get a referral from. Actual referrals are people who you have a real working relationship with. And of course, you only get the referral bonus if it's an actual referral. So what should you do instead? Personally, I found that the best way to build genuine relationships is through in-person events. Luckily for cloud engineering and DevOps in particular, there's a lot of choice. On meetup.com, for example, you can find all sorts of groups in your area. General cloud, AWS, Azure, GCP, DevOps, serverless, to name a few. And when you go to these events, don't make it all about work. At least not at first. Focus on actually trying to get to know people. Of course, the "so what do you do?" question is going to come up, but don't fixate on it. I've seen people at these events who just go around asking everyone where they work, and if it's some no-name company, they'll just exit and move on to the next person. But if the next person is from Google or a big tech company, suddenly their eyes light up like they've just struck gold. Don't be that person. Try to build real, genuine connections. Not only does it make the whole interaction a bit more enjoyable, but it's actually better for your career in the long term. It's also important to remember, even if you do get a referral, it's not a guarantee. The referral gets your application to the top of the pile. You still need to have the knowledge and be able to do well in an interview. Okay, Steve's third point is that opportunities adjacent to your career targets can be a good start. Starting as a support engineer accelerated my career, even though it wasn't the software developer role I was targeting. So Steve himself actually started out as a support engineer and progressed to software development engineer. But it's not just software engineering where this can happen. In fact, there's lots of examples of this happening in the cloud industry too. This Redditor talks about how they went from a network operations center engineer to sysadmin to senior sysadmin to solutions architect. And that's actually a really good path for a lot of people, especially for roles like cloud solutions architect, which are often considered pretty senior positions. It's tough to jump straight into a role like that without any experience. But if you can start out in a related field and build up your knowledge and skills over time, it could be a great way to eventually land the job that you want. The same thing goes for other roles in cloud engineering too. This Redditor talks about transitioning from being the IT guy at his company to a cloud engineering role. This move from help desk engineer or some kind of traditional IT job to cloud engineering is actually quite common. The skills you gain like networking and system administration are transferable to cloud. You still need to put in some effort to learn a cloud platform in detail, but having a foundational knowledge base definitely helps a lot. I think the key here is to be strategic about what you're looking for. Look for roles that will give you exposure to cloud technologies and help you build the skills that you actually need. And don't be afraid to learn on the job either. You know, if you're in a rated role, try to seek out projects in different teams that will help you learn the skills that you want to learn. For example, I've had people reach out to me at my company who want to learn more about certain AWS services. If you're willing to learn and you've got a good foundational IT knowledge, you can pick up a lot of the cloud-specific stuff as you go. So yeah, don't get tunnel vision when it comes to your cloud career. Be open to adjacent opportunities. They can be a great way to get your foot in the door. Now, this is all great advice if you want to get a job in the cloud, but it's important to consider the negative factors about the job too. It may not be the glamorous career that you think it is. You have to ask yourself, is this a job that you actually want? Well, you can find out why you shouldn't be a cloud engineer in this video.